extremely blessed to be born into a family where SpongeBob wasn't banned in the household. Now, I had every DVD growing up, from season 1 to that Wild West DVD of SpongeBob's, okay? SpongeBob wasn't repressed, it was encouraged. Now, most of my memories of watching SpongeBob came from my family's Honda Odyssey van, which had a DVD attached to the top of the roof of our van. One of the DVDs we loved selecting as kids was the SpongeBob Halloween disc. Now, this DVD, it had bangers, okay? It had spooky episodes such as Scaredy Pants, Frankendoodle, I Was a Teenage Gary, Squidward the Unfriendly Ghost. I love that title, by the way. Imitation Krabs, and it even had bangers that were not so scary, such as The Secret Box, Welcome to the Chum Bucket,
Start digging in your butt, twin.
My Pretty Seahorse, Idiot Box, which was my personal favorite episode, and probably one of the most famous SpongeBob episodes, Band Geeks. Yeah, Band Geeks. And while I would love to talk about all the episodes, I will be focusing on the first 5 episodes of the DVD.
The scary one.
Who said that? Who said that?
Now, the DVD menu to this SpongeBob DVD was surprisingly boring. I mean, there was no animated build-ups or like other DVDs, such as Hide and Seek, which was absolutely terrifying to me as a kid. Lost at Sea, which was so good. I mean, the music to this was really good. Tales from the Deep was actually really good because it gives you this perspective of SpongeBob looking around the room. But with the Halloween DVD, it's just still shots of the Bikini Bottom Cemetery, in which you can, either press play or select certain episodes on the tombstones. The episode starts off with a pan of the Bikini Bottom, where the atmosphere has a Halloween-esque vibe. The Krusty Krab is decorated, and the scene switches to SpongeBob doing dishes. He gets a bit spooked out with all the creaky noises, and he completely freaks out when he sees the order papers spelled out boo. After breaking the dishes, he tries escaping, but is blocked by Mr. Krabs. Mr. Krabs stops SpongeBob and asks him if he wants to hear a story. SpongeBob politely declines until he asks if it is a scary story, in which Mr. Krabs says yes. So Mr. Krabs starts doing the famous meme and tells SpongeBob about the tale of the Flying Dutchman. And I'm not gonna lie, his story is kind of creepy, especially the part where he says that the Flying Dutchman keeps all his souls in a bag. And that's when another famous meme, there's a lot of famous memes in this episode, comes out, and the Flying Dutchman, who is Squidward, pops up, and Squidward is kinda acting sus. SpongeBob is terrified, and basically the whole town calls him SpongeBob Scaredy Pants. Patrick comes over later on, and SpongeBob tries to scare him, but it is to no avail. And then he wails to his best friend about how he just wants to be scary. Suddenly, SpongeBob has an idea to dress like a ghost. And at first, it goes wrong because, frankly, he doesn't look like a ghost. And that is until he makes a request to shave part of his head to fit the part of looking like a ghost. He is very confident and starts scaring people, but he doesn't realize he's not as scary as he looks. SpongeBob and Patrick then go to the big Halloween party that is hosted at the Krusty Krab, hoping to scare a few partygoers, and frankly, SpongeBob does a pretty good job. That is until Patrick messes it up and he is then revealed to be SpongeBob. The party people laugh and SpongeBob is humiliated, but that is until the real Flying Dutchman appears, and he is absolutely terrifying to look at, and it just makes you want to look away. The Flying Dutchman tells partygoers that he is going to eat their souls because, frankly, he's tired of it. He's tired of people dressing like him every year and making a mockery of him. And, can you blame the guy? And frankly, the straw that broke the camel's back was SpongeBob's poor attempt to look like him. The Flying Dutchman is about to eat SpongeBob, and as he lifts up his sheet that is around his head, he realized that, wow, SpongeBob is actually pretty terrifying, and he just flies off. And yeah, looking at SpongeBob, yeah, he does look a little bit creepy, and so creepy in fact that all the rest of the Bikini Bottom runs away, and SpongeBob, he accomplishes his goal to actually be scary. Now, my rating for this episode is a solid 10. The whole episode just seems very Halloweenish with its atmosphere. The music was well put together, having this sort of creepy vibe, and I even loved how they used real kid voices at the time as the trick-or-treaters, and one of them was a young Sarah Paxton. The episode starts with Gary exercising, and SpongeBob throws a toy, and Gary takes the next day to bring it back to SpongeBob. Yeah, kind of weird, but either way, SpongeBob is just very much all cuddly and very loving to Gary, and it's so sweet to see the relationship like this, considering how it was totally different in the Gary Come Home episode. I mean, that episode was so sad. Patrick comes by and asks SpongeBob if he's ready to go to the annual jellyfish convention in the Ukulele Bottom for the weekend. SpongeBob has no one to watch Gary, but Squidward comes over, and that's when SpongeBob gets the idea to ask to care for Gary. Squidward is like, what's a Gary? But when he hears that SpongeBob and Patrick will be gone for 3 days, he excitingly agrees to watch over Gary, even though he barely remembers Gary's existence, and he just shoos Patrick and SpongeBob to the bus, and then he goes back home, leaving Gary in the pineapple all by himself. After 3 days, Squidward is black, he's tanned, and Gary is dying. Upon realizing Gary's existence, Squidward tries to feed him, but to no avail. SpongeBob arrives and is horrified at Gary's appearance, and he calls the snail emergency ambulance doctor. The doctor prescribes snail plasma and unprofessionally declines to inject Gary because he's too squeamish. SpongeBob wants Squidward to do it, but this is where it gets a little bit frustrating. He barely lets him take a jab at Gary because SpongeBob is just moving him all around, and it was just dude, calm down, you're gonna get yourself jabbed out. Yeah, and now you're jabbed. Squidward leaves and insists that SpongeBob will be fine, but SpongeBob just feels a bit funny and starts doing a little bit of weird stuff, such as eating from Gary's bowl, all the snail food. He then goes into the bathroom, and that's when the most horrifying transformation takes place, where SpongeBob turns into a snail. Oh, let me backtrack a bit. Did you know that Gary, all he needed was water that was in his water bowl? Cut to Squidward getting ready for bed until he hears a knock at the door. And when he looks out his door, that is when he is horrified when he sees SpongeBob's snail-like appearance. I too would run around the house like a maniac if a sponge snail appeared on my doorstep, and that's exactly what Squidward did. He was just going buck wild. So buck wild that he accidentally injected himself with some of the snail plasma. We then get this beautiful shot of the three snails, Gary, Sponge Snail, and Squid Snail, serenading throughout the night, where they both sing this beautiful song in meows. And you know, it was so beautiful that Patrick had to give them their flowers, or in this case, a shoe in their direction, which hits Squidward. Now, fun fact, there were rumors of a cutscene of Squidward meaning to transform into a snail instead of the smooth transition, but those rumors have been debunked after many research. But people swore that there was a scene where Squidward was transforming into a snail. I give this episode a high 9. I mean, what really got me into this episode was honestly SpongeBob's transformation. It was terrifying. We start with the narrator, who narrates an artist at sea. The artist is frantically sketching until he accidentally drops his pencil in the sea. Now, the narrator low-key burns him, saying that the artist should always bring a spare pencil. SpongeBob and Patrick are playing rock, paper, scissors bubble edition, which I think is pretty cool. And that's when the giant pencil lands, which freaks them out. They use it to draw, and they discover that the drawings can be brought to life. SpongeBob and Patrick fool around drawing jellyfish and pranking Squidward, and that's when SpongeBob decides to prank Squidward by drawing a replica of himself of Doodlebob. Now, what SpongeBob didn't have in mind was the fact that Doodlebob is actually a menace. Like, seriously, he is violent, speaks in gibberish, and most importantly, he dangerously takes the pencil for himself. Now, SpongeBob and Patrick must stop him, but they are taken aback of how smart this doodle is. Like, Doodlebob is drawing holes, he's drawing a giant wrench, and even a bowling ball. Like, he is an evil, smart doodle. But eventually, SpongeBob manages to corner Doodlebob, and when he does, he manages to erase him out of existence. Or does he? The one-armed Doodlebob sneaks into SpongeBob's house and redraws himself, and is threatening to erase SpongeBob. SpongeBob runs away, and the two get into a small struggle where the pencil breaks in two. SpongeBob cleverly says, "Well, Doodle, looks like this is a draw." Doodlebob sharpens his end of the pencil and is challenging SpongeBob. But unfortunately, SpongeBob loses his other end of the pencil. Cornered, SpongeBob backs away, and as Doodlebob steps forward, he accidentally steps on a piece of paper, which transforms his foot on the paper. SpongeBob cleverly slaps Doodlebob into the book, where Doodlebob remains permanently on paper. The pencil is returned to the sailor, and when he receives it, he tries sketching again, only it breaks, and he has no pencil sharpener. I give this episode a 7 out of 10. It's not as scary, but it is more creepy, and I just thought the whole episode was a little bit more funny. We open to a scene of Squidward creepily making a sculpture of himself, all while being surrounded by all arts of himself. Loki, you gotta admit, he knows how to love himself. Or maybe he's just a little bit more vain. Anyways, SpongeBob and Patrick are doing, well, whatever it is they're doing. They don't know what they're doing. And Squidward purposely ruins their game and goes back to loving himself by doing some high maintenance routines. SpongeBob and Patrick decide to throw a clam back and forth, but the clam accidentally breaks into Squidward's house, and then it is lodged into Squidward's, or rather Squidward's sculpture's head. They go to his elevator. I mean, yeah, this man has an elevator. I don't even think they brought his elevator back again to take the clam back, and they notice that he just looks a little bit off, and they put him under the sun, and unknowingly that is when Squidward, the mold Squidward, melts, and Patrick and SpongeBob panic, and they think that Squidward is finito, dead. Squidward enters the room, and he is dressed in a white robe, and he has a towel over his head while also having his face all powdered in white, basically looking like a ghost. Fearing for their lives, SpongeBob and Patrick beg for mercy because they think that that is Squidward's ghost. Now, Squidward takes advantage of the situation. He decides to order SpongeBob and Patrick around as a ghost and make them his slaves. He orders them around to give him food, to carry him around, and to do elaborate tasks such as making music with a tissue. I mean, that's cruel, man. Like, you can't make music with a tissue. Squidward then later on orders SpongeBob and Patrick to clean his back room, and this is when another meme is born. They find a comic, SpongeBob and Patrick find a comic where it talks about the Flying Dutchman and how the Flying Dutchman was never really put to rest, and that's why he haunts around the Bikini Bottom. So Patrick and SpongeBob decide to bury him and create another sort of meme. And Squidward high-key gets a little scared because they are low-key trying to put him in the ground alive, and Squidward is like, you know what, let me confess this to you, SpongeBob, Patrick, I am really alive. But SpongeBob and Patrick, they're not buying it. Realizing that they can't put him in the ground, they decide to lift him up and send him above to the great beyond. And that's exactly what they decide to do. Blowing a ginormous bubble towards Squidward, large enough to capture him, Squidward floats above, and there he is with the seagulls. I'm gonna give this episode a 5 out of 10 when it comes to scariness. I just thought that this episode was hilarious as a child, though. I mean, it was a very silly episode because them thinking that Squidward was, you know, the melted sculpture was just pretty ridiculous and funny. But what really got me as a child was when Patrick threw the watermelon on Squidward and just his face. Oh my word, I remember laughing at that. The episode starts off with a robot fish that is Plankton posing as a customer at the Krusty Krab. Plankton offers SpongeBob $1 million if he told him the secret formula. SpongeBob, the loyal employee that he is, goes on a long tangent about how it should not be shared by anyone but the creator of the formula, Mr. Krabs. Fed up, Plankton demands the formula before getting booted out. And it's funny because Plankton yells out, "I went to college!" as if that matters because you are stealing something. Mr. Krabs reiterates how it is important to discuss the formula only to Mr. Krabs himself. And SpongeBob takes this really serious. I mean, he is taking it so serious that he rips off the head of a guy because he thinks that it's Plankton and it's not really him, and poor guy. Squidward is sent to do inventory by Mr. Krabs, and he is then greeted by a robot Krabs. Now this robot clearly has the appearance of Mr. Krabs, but in itself it just looks like a really robotic Mr. Krabs all in all, and Squidward catches on to that. But not until Robot Krabs gives him the day off, and all of a sudden he's just like, oh, okay, Mr. Krabs, you are the real Mr. Krabs. SpongeBob meets up with robot Mr. Krabs, which excites Plankton, but Mr. Krabs keeps appearing, which prompts Robo Krabs, aka Plankton, to roll a singular regular penny. And Mr. Krabs, he easily just goes along with it. He chases that penny, and that penny goes on for miles. Robo Krabs tries to probe SpongeBob for the recipe, but not before doing a billion bajillion rules that they have before getting the formula. Finally, Plankton is at his wits' ends, and he nearly blows up when he is wondering why he can't have the secret formula. But that is when SpongeBob reveals how the original Mr. Krabs told SpongeBob to keep the formula in a bottle. Plankton almost reaches for that bottle when the penny rolls by, and then that's when the real Mr. Krabs shows up. After threatening the crabs with tartar sauce to figure out the real Mr. Krabs, SpongeBob asks a series of questions in which the real Mr. Krabs must answer. The original Mr. Krabs really fumbles the bag, and SpongeBob sends him as a meal ticket to a giant hand. Yes, you heard that correctly. Now, when SpongeBob hands over the formula to Plankton, he's laughing all evilly, and that is until that SpongeBob activates a self-destruct button in which Plankton installs when putting a penny inside a coin slot. I give this episode like a 2 out of 10 in terms of scariness, because this episode was more so high stakes and it was just genuinely a funny episode. Okay, so out of all SpongeBob episodes I've listed, which one sounded the most interesting? I want to know, guys. Comment down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!